Within the hidden lines of Psalm 112 lies a formula for prosperity that has endured for thousands of years, yet has been largely forgotten. This is not a secret reserved for spiritual elites, but a divine blueprint for anyone willing to align the mind with the laws of the universe. Prosperity is not luck, nor is it chance, but the natural current that is activated when the heart is steadfast, the thoughts are upright, and the hands remain open. This video will take you through 16 layers of meaning, unveiling the formula of prosperity and transforming it into the very rhythm of your daily life. Unlocking the hidden formula in Psalm 112, there is a formula for prosperity written thousands of years ago. Preserved in Psalm 112, it is not a hollow blessing nor a sacred passage to be recited without thought, but a detailed blueprint for a life of wealth, stability, and endurance. Yet most people pass over it as if it were merely a religious hymn, repeated in ritual or memorized in the mind, without ever pausing to decode the power concealed within, like someone walking past a treasure map who praises its beauty, yet never digs into the ground it points to. They miss the chance to turn a promise into a living experience. Psalm 112 begins with a decisive affirmation. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who delights greatly in his commandments. Behind this single line lies a spiritual key, and if you grasp it rightly, you will see that prosperity is no longer a matter of random luck, but the natural outcome of an order already established. This is the forgotten blueprint, and your task is not to admire it, but to live within it. This formula is overlooked because people tend to seek wealth outwardly, in income, in markets, in the shifting tides of life. But the scripture lays a different foundation, reminding you that prosperity begins within, in how you understand the unseen law governing the entire universe. To fear the Lord is not to tremble before punishment, but to stand in deep reverence for this divine order. It is the recognition that there is an invisible intelligence greater than any ego, directing every breath, every river, every movement of the stars. When your mind bows before that order and aligns with it, a door opens. Instead of striving helplessly in fear and scarcity, you begin to walk in the natural flow of safety and sufficiency. Notice that the psalm does not mention a particular job, a specific circumstance, or a prescribed ritual. It describes a spiritual climate. The one who is called blessed is the one rooted in faith, finding delight in the law of life. What does this mean in practice? It means that person knows that every thought, every word, every feeling is a seed sown into the fertile ground of the subconscious. And since the subconscious does not choose, it only reproduces. Wealth or poverty, peace or chaos are but faithful replications of whatever has been planted. Imagine holding in your hands a force as precise as gravity itself. You may deny it, you may forget it, but it operates just the same. If you sow fear, it will ripen into anxiety and misery. If you sow trust, it will blossom into peace and prosperity. This is not vague philosophy, but an unchangeable spiritual law. The problem is that most people stop at admiring the words, feeling them noble, but never applying them to transform reality. What makes Psalm 112 extraordinary is not lofty promises, but the vivid picture of one who lives in divine order. Such a person stands like a pillar amid upheaval, unmoved by fear. Their wealth is not hoarded in possessions, but springs from within, where truth is planted and reaped. Prosperity here is not merely money, but stability of mind, trust in the flow, a security untouched by circumstance. When you look back at your life, how many times have you chased wealth as if it lay outside you? only to find emptiness once attained? How many times have you believed prosperity came from rare opportunities, special connections, or sudden luck? Psalm 112 overturns this thinking. It declares that prosperity does not hide, does not waver, but flows constantly, awaiting your alignment. Just as the sun is always shining, you only need to open the windows of your mind to let the light in. A blueprint can transform an entire life, but only when you make it real. Many hold an instruction manual, yet use it as a decorative object. Likewise, many read the Bible only to memorize it. Without ever living the law, it proclaims. JosephMurphy once said, "The Bible is not merely literature or ritual. It is a map of the mind, recording how man connects with divine order. If you read it as poetry, you gain only passing emotion. If you decode it as a formula, you can transform destiny itself." Picture a farmer holding precious seeds, yet instead of planting them, he merely admires and praises them. Years pass, and the field remains barren. This is the image of many in relation to Psalm 112. They admire the words, but never sow them into the subconscious, never nurture them with practice, never water them with faith. As a result, the harvest never comes. The prosperity formula remains but abandoned. The opening of Psalm 112 is a call not just to admiration, but to unlocking. It summons you to rise as the master of your inner garden, to sow with positive thought, to nourish with trusting emotion, to protect with steadfast affirmation. When you do so, the subconscious responds with a reality of stability and abundance. This is the first step to unlocking the prosperity blueprint, a design that has never grown old, a promise that has never lost its power, but one that becomes real only when you choose to embody it in daily life. The universal law and alignment. When Psalm 112 declares, "Blessed is the one who fears the Lord," it is not a summons to live in trembling or blind dread. Fear the Lord, in its original sense, does not mean terror, but a profound reverence for a divine order that governs the universe. It is the awakening to the truth that an unseen intelligence sustains every heartbeat, every rotation of the stars, and every current of life. When you enter this reverent state, you cease trying to force things into your will and instead begin to flow with the law. This is not weak submission, but a higher strength, the assurance that spiritual order is unfailing and always working for life. To delight in his commandments is not to rigidly obey religious codes, but to rejoice in the spiritual principles woven into the very fabric of mind and cosmos. One of these principles is the law of reproduction. Thought produces after its kind. Just as the seed reproduces itself, the thought planted in the subconscious manifests outward into life. When you take joy in this law, you no longer see it as a burden, but as a guarantee that whatever you sow in faith, gratitude, and clear vision must appear. If a musician understands the law of harmony, he can play any song without fear of chaos. If an architect grasps the law of balance and gravity, he can raise a building secure amidst the busiest city. Likewise, when you delight in the commandments, you are in tune with the law of mind and the law of the universe, and you step into freedom. You are no longer tossed between luck and chance. For, with certainty that prosperity is not a sudden gift, but the inevitable result of alignment. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, have you ever regarded these principles as heavy burdens, or have you found joy in living true to them? How many times have you longed for good results, yet planted seeds of fear, doubt, and lack? And how many times have you felt peace the instant you surrendered into trust, knowing a greater order was at work for your benefit? Your answer right now is the very sign of where you stand. In your journey of alignment with the law, reverence for the universal law is not merely an intellectual awareness, it is an inner climate. When you truly revere it, you no longer panic at outer changes. Markets may rise and fall, the news may roar with urgency, but your heart rests secure, knowing the spiritual law never changes. Just as the earth unfailingly orbits the sun, so does this universe revolve around harmony and order. And when you delight in the commandments, you are enjoying this very rhythm. You see the sowing of good thoughts as the planting of precious seed. You rejoice in maintaining gratitude. You take pleasure in the clarity of choosing forgiveness over resentment, because you know this is the way of living, aligned with law. One essential truth is that spiritual law cannot be broken. It can only be lived rightly or wrongly. The one who knows the law and lives in it is like a sailor who understands how to use the wind to guide his ship. The one who does not may complain of storms, yet the ship is still carried along. When you revere the law and delight in it, you become the master of the vessel, not the victim of the tempest. Alignment is the continual tuning of thought, feeling, and action into harmony with this order. It is like tuning an instrument before a performance, one string out of tune, and the whole song falters. So with the mind, one deviation from true belief throws the whole of life out of harmony. But when you tune again, when you return to reverence for law and joy in its commandments, the music of life rings clear. Do you realize that every time you choose a thought, you are deciding whether to harmonize or to clash with divine order? Do you see that each time you affirm peace, you strike the right note in the cosmic song, and that each time you yield to fear, you play off-key, creating dissonance in the music? This is a responsibility, but it is also a privilege. You can choose, and it is this very choice that sets the climate of your spirit. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for delving into the true meaning of fear the Lord and delight in His commandments. Your presence itself is proof that you are ready to step beyond admiring words and into living practice. You've already set your foot on the path of alignment, and as you continue, the prosperity blueprint of Psalm 112 will become your living experience. Prosperity begins in consciousness. Prosperity does not arise from the fluctuations of the market, from random figures flashing across electronic boards, or from fleeting strokes of luck that come and go. It begins in consciousness, in the inner state, where every image, belief, and assumption is sown like seeds into the garden of the subconscious. When your conscious mind is filled with fear, lack, and doubt, that garden immediately reproduces a reality in kind. When your consciousness is steeped in trust, gratitude, and peace, that same garden faithfully recreates a life that is stable, abundant, and full of opportunity. Prosperity, in its truest sense, is the reflection of your spiritual climate. Observe daily life. There are those who seem to work endlessly, chasing every opportunity, yet inwardly remain haunted by the shadow of insufficiency. They accumulate, they strive, yet still feel insecure, for their consciousness emits a signal of fear, and the subconscious can only generate circumstances that reinforce that insecurity. By contrast, there are those who walk calmly, knowing that spiritual law is always at work. They are not obsessed with lack, and that very state of mind becomes a magnet for sufficiency. This is not mysticism, but the inevitable response of the law of mind. In Psalm 112, the one called blessed is not the one who hoards the most, but the one whose heart is steadfast, who lives in reverence for divine order. It is this inner climate that opens the gates of prosperity, when your consciousness stands in awe, in trust that the unseen order surrounds all. You step into the frequency of wealth already present. Prosperity is not something to be hunted, but a frequency to be harmonized with. Every transformation begins within. The subconscious is like loyal soil. It does not distinguish between good or bad seed. It simply brings to life whatever is planted. If you constantly imagine failure, if you allow your mind to be filled with images of loss, the subconscious takes this as command, and reality responds accordingly. But if you plant images of success, nurture them with trust, and hold your conscious mind steady, the subconscious also accepts this as command and leads your life to the corresponding result. Prosperity, therefore, is not a random gift, but the inevitable outcome of an inner process. This truth also explains why some attain wealth yet feel empty. They have accumulated outwardly, but never changed. The inner climate, money becomes a burden because consciousness still clings to fear of loss. Conversely, some possess little in material terms, but live in fullness, for their minds are anchored in gratitude and trust. Prosperity in its deeper meaning is not measured by the balance of a bank account, but by stability, faith, and harmony. And this very state, when maintained, becomes the channel through which material wealth flows in. Imagine your consciousness as a broadcasting tower. Every thought and emotion is a wave sent out. The subconscious and the universe reply with precision to that frequency. If you transmit lack, you will only hear the echo of lack. If you transmit faith, abundance, and safety, you will receive the same frequency in return. This is the principle of reproduction that Psalm 112 portrays in the image of the righteous one, with a fixed heart, unafraid of evil tidings. A crucial truth to recognize is that prosperity is not determined by economic conditions, but by the state of consciousness you maintain. External fluctuations may cause temporary shifts, but if your consciousness remains firm, it will recalibrate circumstances back to balance. Like a compass always pointing north, the subconscious realigns external factors to mirror the inner signal. The one whose consciousness is fixed in lack will experience lack even in plenty. The one whose consciousness is set on abundance will find opportunity even in adversity. This requires spiritual discipline. Consciousness does not automatically remain in prosperity. It must be trained. Each day, you must watch your stream of thought, uproot seeds of fear, and plant seeds of certainty. Affirmations, positive visualization, and gratitude are the ways you keep the broadcast tuned to the right frequency. When this practice becomes habit, your consciousness turns into fertile soil, and prosperity is a natural harvest. Psalm 112 does not merely describe an ideal, it points to an attainable state. The Blessed One is the one who understands that prosperity begins within. Such a person no longer chases luck, no longer panics at upheaval, but holds the mind steady in faith, and that steadiness becomes the foundation from which wealth, opportunity, and blessing pull forth. In practice, this means you do not need to wait for circumstances to change before you feel prosperous. You must begin to feel wealth now in consciousness by acknowledging the sufficiency already present. This feeling impresses itself upon the subconscious, and from there the universe responds with people, events, and opportunities in harmony with it. Prosperity is therefore no longer a distant goal, but a state you choose in the present. To put it plainly, prosperity begins in consciousness, and consciousness is the one place where you hold complete dominion. No one else can sow into your garden but you. You are the one who chooses the beliefs, the images, the thoughts, and the divine law guarantees that whatever seed is planted must reproduce after its kind. This is certain, unchanging, and it is your greatest opportunity. For the moment you change your consciousness, you change your entire life, sowing seeds in the garden of the subconscious. Each day you walk within a garden, not one of soil and trees, but the garden of your own subconscious. In this garden, every thought is a seed. Every emotion is the water that nourishes. Every action is the sunlight that strengthens. The law of sowing and reaping operates here with no less precision than any natural law. What you plant will reproduce, expand, and return to you in the form of circumstances, events, and tangible results. This is an unfailing principle, and you are living within it, whether you are aware of it or not. When a person sows seeds of worry, doubt, and resentment, they may hope for peace, but the subconscious can only faithfully yield more anxiety and disorder. When a person sows seeds of gratitude, trust, and bright images of success, the subconscious likewise reproduces a life reflecting that state. This is why the most important question is not whether life favors you, but what you are planting today in the garden of your inner world. Imagine you hold in your hand a bag of seeds. If you choose rice, you cannot expect grapes. If you plant weeds, you cannot expect roses. The subconscious operates the same way. It does not select. It does not judge. It simply germinates what you give it, repeating after its kind, and projecting it outward into life. This is why Psalm 112 emphasizes that the Blessed One is the one who lives uprightly. For such a person sows upright seeds into the mind, and the harvest comes as a matter of certainty. Emotions serve as water. A dry thought may wither away, but once it is watered by strong emotion, it becomes a seed alive with power. If you repeat an idea with fear, you are watering it with the very force that makes it root deep and spring quickly into reality. On the other hand, when you repeat an idea with faith and positive feeling, you are planting the seeds of success. This is why Joseph Murphy declared that the subconscious does not respond to empty words, but to the emotion that accompanies them. Action is the sunlight. You may hold thoughts and feelings in your heart, but if they are never expressed through action, the seed remains incomplete. A person may nourish the belief that they can succeed, but if they never step forward, it is as though they keep the seed hidden in darkness. Sunlight comes when you dare to act from the faith you have sown, and it is consistent action that allows the subconscious to confirm that your belief is truth. This is not distant philosophy, but immediate reality. Look at your life today, and you will see the results of seeds planted years ago. Every relationship, every work situation, your level of peace or unrest, all of it is harvest. If you desire to change the harvest, do not blame the soil or the heavens. Begin with the seeds you sow. Ask yourself, what thoughts have repeated in your mind over the years? Have they been affirmations of lack or acknowledgments of abundance? Have they been images of failure or visions of your success? Each time you permit a thought to linger, you have dropped a seed into the garden of the subconscious, and today you are walking among the trees that have sprung from those very seeds. When you see this, you will recognize the immense power in your hands. You do not need to wait for an external event. You need only to master the seeds within, for the law of sowing and reaping will never change. What you sow, you shall reap. This is certainty, and this is liberation. For the moment you change the seed, you change the harvest. Now I invite you to pause and reflect. Are you ready to sow into the garden of your subconscious new seeds? Seeds of peace, of prosperity, of unwavering trust? If your answer is yes, leave a comment below. You may write, "I am ready to change." Or simply leave the number 1 to affirm that you are present, you are listening, and you are choosing to plant a new seed in this very moment. Thank you for your presence. For every choice like this not only transforms you, but reshapes the harvest of your entire life. A steadfast heart, Psalm 112 paints a striking image. His heart is fixed. This is the heart that has been set in place, unmoved by bad news, unshaken by outward circumstances. It is the mark of true prosperity, a wealth far beyond numbers, found in stability and deep peace. When your heart is steadfast, you no longer live in anxiety every time the market shifts, nor in fear every time conditions change. You walk with calm assurance, for the divine order is still at work, and no event can overturn the certainty of law. A steadfast heart does not mean you never face difficulty. Bad news may come, challenges may appear, but deep within, you maintain a center that cannot be shaken. Like a great tree, the storm may shake its branches, but roots buried deep in the earth hold the trunk firm. So too, the one whose heart is fixed in faith stands still in the storms of life. This is not rigidity, but a flexible stability where you adapt to circumstance without losing your inner foundation. This steadfastness is not formed overnight, but through continual training. Each time you choose trust over panic, each time you choose gratitude over complaint, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. Over time, your heart becomes a fortress. Bad news may knock at the door, but it no longer dictates your emotions. You do not deny difficulty, but you are not controlled by it. This is the kind of wealth no event can steal. In modern life, emotional instability is what causes many to lose direction. They hear one bad report and collapse. They meet one setback and give up. True prosperity cannot survive in a mind so easily shaken. For material wealth is only the effect, while the root is inner stability. The one with a steadfast heart may lose a battle, but they do not lose faith. They may face rejection, but they do not lose peace. And it is this stability that enables them to rise again, to keep walking, and to reap lasting success. The psalm declares, "He shall not be afraid of evil tidings." This is the affirmation of a state of life where bad news no longer stirs an inner storm. When you understand that divine order governs all, every upheaval is temporary, while the law of life is eternal, the one with a steadfast heart is not imprisoned by present circumstance. They see beyond, they perceive the long flow, and they know that whatever comes is part of a greater order. This is the vision that faith provides. Such stability also creates a unique magnetism. When you are not easily moved, others sense the strength that radiates from you. In your family, you become an anchor. In your work, you emerge as a natural leader. In relationships, you generate safety. A steadfast heart not only secures your peace, but spreads strength to those around you. This is a wealth unseen, yet unmistakably felt. The truth is, material riches without inner steadfastness are an illusion. A person may possess many assets, yet tremble at the news, fear loss, and be haunted by insecurity. That is not true prosperity. For prosperity demands a firm foundation of spirit. A steadfast heart transforms wealth into a peaceful experience rather than a burden. It turns resources into tools for service and creation instead of chains of fear. To achieve this steadfastness, you must cultivate a new habit of response. When bad news comes, instead of being swept into fear, pause and remind yourself that spiritual law has not changed. When trials appear, instead of seeing an ending, view them as opportunities to strengthen faith. Each time you respond this way, your heart gains another layer of protection. Gradually, steadfastness becomes a natural reflex. Psalm 112 speaks not only of a spiritual state, but of a practical way of living. The one with a steadfast heart does not need to control everything in order to feel secure. They have found safety in trust in divine order. And this very safety frees them from tension, opens clarity and creativity. They act not from fear, but from certainty. This is why their work steadily prospers, their relationships steadily harmonize, and their trials steadily turn into opportunities. True wealth is freedom in the heart. It is when you are no longer swayed by circumstances, no longer obsessed with loss, no longer ruled by fear. A steadfast heart is the foundation upon which prosperity blooms in your life. Once the heart is set, everything else finds its place. Prosperity is no longer an external goal, but a climate you carry in every moment. And from there, all that you touch becomes a blessing. Faith as spiritual architecture. Faith is not a passing emotion, nor a vague state that appears in prayer only to vanish when reality confronts you. Faith is a foundation, a spiritual architecture built from thought, assumption, and deep conviction. It is like the strong framework of a house, determining whether that house will stand firm in the storm. If the frame is made of rotten wood, even a light wind can bring it down. But if it is built of solid steel, the storms may rage, yet the house remains upright. In Psalm 112, the image of the one whose heart is fixed is the portrait of a structure built according to principle. Such a person does not merely believe in moments of emotion, but has constructed an entire framework of thought upon the certainty of divine law. Faith becomes the bricks, conviction, the beams, right assumptions, the foundation. Together they form an inner house where the soul may rest, and from which the whole of life is directed. If you observe closely, you will see that every choice, every action, even every feeling arises from the architecture already built within. One who lives in the assumption that the world is filled with lack builds a house with walls of worry. One who lives in the assumption that divine law continually guides and provides builds a house with walls of peace. And when the storm of change strikes, only one of these houses can stand. Joseph Murphy emphasized that the subconscious does not respond to shallow wishes, but only to deep impressions repeated again and again. This means your spiritual architecture is not shaped by fleeting moods, but by beliefs reinforced daily. If you desire a house that will endure, you must lay each brick carefully, examine the foundation continually, and never cease to strengthen the frame. Faith is the same. It must be built with mental discipline and persistence in thought. Picture your mind as a construction site. Every idea is a brick, every assumption a beam, every repeated affirmation the cement that binds it all together. If you build with fear, the structure will be weak. If you build with trust, the structure will be strong. And when the work is complete, you will see that your inner house is not only shelter from the storm, but also a sanctuary for your soul at every moment. What is remarkable is that this architecture governs not only your feelings, but also your outward results. The one with firm faith acts with assurance, speaks with authority, and walks with peace. This creates a climate that draws opportunities, people, and circumstances naturally toward them. The one without foundation acts hesitantly, speaks without force, and moves in fear. Their life reflects the fragility of the structure within. Faith is the framework, and that framework can be designed with intention. You need not wait for chance to possess strong faith. You can begin by choosing right thoughts, repeating affirmations of truth, and visualizing harmonious outcomes. Each time you do so, you add another beam, another brick, another layer of cement to the inner house. Over time, it becomes a fortress, standing tall in the face of every trial. A good house is not only for dwelling, but for returning. Faith is the same. When the outer world shakes, when bad news unsettles many, you can return to your inner house. There you find peace, certainty, and the presence of divine law. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Faith is that space, the dwelling where you remain firm no matter what occurs. If you wish to test the strength of your spiritual architecture, look at how you respond to adversity. If a small event throws you into panic, the foundation is weak. If even in trial you maintain peace, the house has been built according to principle, and the truth is you can always rebuild, always reinforce, always strengthen. It is never too late to erect a new structure, one designed upon right belief. True prosperity does not begin with outward wealth, but with the stability of the inner house. When faith becomes architecture, no longer a passing feeling, you enter a new state of living. You are no longer driven by headlines, nor swayed by fear, but live in the certainty of law. And from that certainty, every area of life begins to flourish. This is not theory, but reality for anyone willing to build their inner house with the materials of faith. That house becomes your rest, your foundation, your place of return. And once it is built, you will know that nothing outside can shake the prosperity within. Faith has become your spiritual architecture, and that structure abides with you, unchanging, enduring, as eternal as the divine law upon which it is founded. Righteousness before wealth. Psalm 112 declares with commanding clarity, wealth and riches shall be in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. The order is deliberate, not accidental. Righteousness first, wealth after. This means that wealth is not the cause of a righteous mind, but rather it is righteousness and inner order that open the way for wealth to appear. This is a spiritual principle, and if ignored, one may acquire temporary riches, but never hold them long, for the foundation within is too weak to sustain them. Righteousness should not be confined to narrow definitions of formal morality or religious ritual. It is rightness, alignment with spiritual law, one who lives in sound assumptions, clear thoughts, wholesome emotions, and honest actions is establishing a climate of inner stability. When this foundation is laid firm, wealth is simply the natural result. Conversely, if the foundation is unstable, assumption distorted, thoughts twisted, emotions negative, then even if wealth is gained, it will soon dissolve like a house built upon sand. Picture a house. The first structure is not the roof tiles or the ornate interior, but the foundation. If the foundation is weak, everything above, no matter how beautiful, awaits collapse. Likewise, wealth is never the foundation. It is only the visible portion above. The true foundation is righteousness, inner rightness, and stability. When the foundation is secure, wealth and riches appear in the house as a consequence, not by force. This is the order that Psalm 112 affirms, an unchanging order. Many try to reverse this principle. They believe that once they acquire wealth, peace and stability will follow. But reality proves otherwise. How many hold vast fortunes, yet live with restless hearts, broken families, and sleepless nights? Wealth without righteousness only multiplies anxiety, suspicion, and disorder. True prosperity is when wealth becomes the outward reflection of an inner life already set in order. In this vision, wealth is not only money, it is the wholeness of life health, relationships, work, and spiritual peace all flow from one root. Righteousness, right thought produces right emotion. Right emotion leads to right action. And right action opens to right results. This is a chain of logic that cannot be broken. When you sow right seed, the harvest is of the same kind. Consider the contrast of two people. The first gains wealth through cunning, deceit, or manipulation. Outwardly, they appear successful, but inwardly they live in fear, suspicion, and unrest. They dwell under the shadow of loss, and that fear eventually erodes and destroys. The second builds on righteousness without deceit, with harmonious thought, trusting the law. They may begin with little, but wealth comes slowly and steadily, enduring. For them, wealth is no burden, but a means to live fully and to share. Wealth and riches shall be in his house is the step that follows once the foundation is secure. It affirms that wealth is certain when one lives in right order. It is not a distant promise, but the law of reproduction. The house is the symbol of consciousness. When the inner house has been constructed with integrity, gratitude, trust, and love, wealth naturally appears as a guest. And this guest will remain, for the house is strong enough to host it. In practice, righteousness before wealth means you must prioritize inner order before chasing result. If you focus on correcting the roots of thought, cultivating inner rightness, and transforming negative assumptions into positive ones, wealth will appear as inevitable outcome. If you neglect the roots and only chase results, you remain caught in the cycle of gain and loss, of hope and disappointment. The ancients said, money is a good servant, but a poor master. When wealth comes before righteousness, it becomes the master, driving the mind astray. But when righteousness is present first, wealth becomes the faithful servant, serving a life of peace. This is the crucial distinction and the reminder that true wealth cannot be separated from rightness. Psalm 812 affirms, his righteousness endureth forever. Righteousness is eternal foundation, unchanging through the ages. Wealth may fluctuate, circumstances may change, but when the foundation is right, prosperity will return. A person may lose riches in misfortune, but if their inner order is sound, they will build again. For wealth is only the effect, while righteousness is the enduring cause. True wealth is not measured by how much you possess, but by the foundation upon which you stand. If the foundation is false assumption, wealth is but shifting sand. If the foundation is righteousness, wealth is solid rock, and once the rock is laid, you need not fear the result, for it will come at the right time, in the right way, in the right measure. This is the spiritual order that Psalm 112 invites you to live in. Wealth and riches shall be in his house is not a wish, but a principle. It declares that when the inner life is rightly ordered, prosperity is inevitable. And this is true wealth, a wealth not measured only in possessions, but in stability, peace, and strength from within. Character as the true currency. There is a kind of invisible wealth whose value surpasses all gold and silver, and that is character, the essence of one's inner nature, integrity, compassion, and generosity are the true coins, more enduring than any form of material possession. Money can change hands. Opportunities may vanish, but once character is formed, it becomes presence, a quality no upheaval can steal. Psalm 112 sketches the portrait of such a person: upright, gracious, full of compassion. These very qualities form the foundation of lasting prosperity. History has proven again and again that wealth without character cannot endure. A person may use deceit to amass riches quickly, but the absence of integrity soon leads them into collapse. For the subconscious, which is the law of perfect justice, reflects only the true inner state. If the mind is filled with deception and selfishness, the outer results will eventually dissolve, but the one who nurtures integrity, compassion, and generosity builds a durable energy that draws resources and opportunities. This is not superstition, but the natural law of life. Character is true currency because it is the foundation of trust. In society, trust is the glue that binds relationships and opens doors. When one is known for integrity, their word becomes bond, and others readily entrust them with responsibility, partnership, and opportunity. When one is known for compassion, their presence becomes a comfort, and enduring relationships grow around them. When one is known for generosity, they create a cycle of giving and receiving, ensuring the flow of abundance in their life is never blocked. These are forms of wealth that money alone cannot buy. Integrity sets you free. The dishonest must always live in fear of exposure, always wearing masks, always restless. The upright are free of such burden, for they live in harmony with spiritual law. This peace itself is wealth. Compassion allows you to connect deeply with others, opening your heart to see needs and meet them with love. Relationships born of compassion endure beyond those based on fleeting interest. Generosity makes you like a flowing river, never clinging, always giving, and therefore never lacking. Money may come and go, but character, once sown, remains forever. Psalm 112 describes the righteous as gracious, full of compassion, and upright. This is not empty moral praise, but a description of a mind aligned with law. The gracious are those who forgive and release easily. The compassionate are those who empathize, stepping into another's place to heal rather than harm. The righteous are those who choose what is right, refusing to trade eternal order for temporary gain. These qualities form the foundation wealth cannot shake. Look back and you will see that every great collapse in history began with the absence of character. Empires crumbled when greed and cruelty replaced justice. Enterprises fell when dishonesty and avarice displaced integrity. Relationships broke when selfishness replaced love. Conversely, the individuals and communities that endured across generations all shared one common trait: the presence of integrity, compassion, and generosity. Character is also the only currency recognized by the subconscious. You may deceive others, but never yourself. The subconscious knows your true essence and will create conditions accordingly. If within you there is uprightness, opportunities will appear naturally. If within you there is deceit, those opportunities will dissolve. This is why character cannot be faked. It must be lived and reinforced daily. Integrity, compassion, and generosity are not only spiritual qualities but strategies of long-term prosperity. The man of integrity may lose short-term opportunities, but will always gain larger ones through trust. The compassionate may appear soft in a competitive world, yet it is compassion that forges relationships. No crisis can break. The generous may give much, yet by giving They become the center of a network of blessing. Never truly lacking, you can measure a person's true worth not by the money they hold, but by the character they carry. When they walk into a room, their presence speaks louder than their possessions. Stability, trust, warmth, these cannot be purchased. This is true wealth, a wealth that cannot be stolen, cannot go bankrupt, cannot decay with time. Psalm 112 shows that prosperity is inseparable from character. Wealth without integrity is fragile. Wealth without compassion is cold. Wealth without generosity is stagnant. But when these three qualities are present, wealth becomes a tool, a channel for life to expand, for seeds to be sown, and for legacy to remain. Character is the true currency, and once possessed, all other forms of wealth follow as natural effects. True wealth is when your life is built on the foundation of character. You need not fear loss, for character cannot be taken. You need not dread change, for character stands above change, and you need not prove anything, for your very presence radiates value. Character is the only currency with eternal worth, and when you live in it, you touch the lasting prosperity that many desire, but few recognize at its true source. Stewardship and the wisdom of management. Psalm 112 says, "A good man showeth favor and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion." Asterisk. In this short verse lies a great truth. The righteous man is not only one who gives, but one who manages, one who directs his affairs with wisdom. Prosperity is not blind accumulation nor reckless spending, but the balance between generosity and prudence, between giving and governing. This is the essence of stewardship, the awareness that wealth and opportunity come to you not merely for enjoyment, but for management and distribution in a spirit of responsibility. Stewardship is not absolute ownership, but trusteeship. Every resource, money, talent, time, health is a gift entrusted to you to cultivate, to develop, to use rightly. When the psalm says the righteous lends, it does not imply carelessness, but the opening of circulation. Wealth is like water. If hoarded in a closed reservoir, it stagnates. But if allowed to flow through channels, it irrigates many fields. Yet just as a river needs banks to prevent becoming a flood, so giving must be coupled with wisdom, lest it turn into waste or dependency. The true steward never gives to impress, nor to purchase praise. He gives because he knows wealth is alive only in circulation. At the same time, he directs his affairs with caution. He does not scatter seed on rocks, but chooses fertile ground. He does not give blindly, but in the right place, to the right person, at the right time. It is the marriage of generosity and wise management that creates enduring prosperity. Observe those skilled in stewardship. They are neither wasteful spenders nor miserly hoarders. They walk the middle path of balance. They know when to invest, when to conserve, when to release. They see wealth as the bloodstream of the body, needing circulation to sustain life, yet needing structure to nourish each part. This is the very image of stewardship emphasized in Psalm 112. By contrast, those who only give without wisdom may at first be praised as generous, but soon fall into depletion. They become victims of misuse, and their kindness ceases to bring good fruit. Others who cling tightly, never giving, fearing loss, may accumulate for a season, but their wealth becomes sterile, creating no flow, no blessing, and ultimately no meaning. True stewardship lies in giving rightly with purpose, while preserving long-term stability. In modern life, Stewardship extends beyond finances to energy, time, and even speech. One may be rich in money but poor in wisdom of use, and still end in loss. Another, though starting with little, allocates, prioritizes, and channels resources toward what is worthy and thus grows steadily richer. Prosperity, by spiritual law, never springs from disorder, but from order and discipline. Psalm 112 shows that giving and management are not opposites, but complements. The righteous is both gracious and discreet. Their goodness is not impulsive, but considered. They avoid the trap of solving short-term problems only to create long-term dependence. They know that true giving strengthens rather than weakens. This is the difference between enlightened compassion and blind pity. The steward also understands that small decisions shape the larger climate. They do not despise small sums, nor neglect daily actions. They know the way they manage today determines the harvest tomorrow. If they give with faith and manage with wisdom, the subconscious records that they are worthy of more. If they waste or misuse, the subconscious responds with lack. This is the law of perfect justice, operating in every detail of life. Stewardship is inseparable from responsibility. When you receive a resource, you do not merely own it, you bear the duty of its right use. Many think wealth is purely personal property, free for whim. But in spiritual perspective, everything received is a trust from the greater order, and how you use it determines whether the flow continues. He who is faithful in little will be entrusted with more. This is the unchanging principle. Wise stewardship also demands humility. The true steward never imagines he is the source of supply. He knows he is only the channel. Thus he is not arrogant in plenty, nor despondent in scarcity. He focuses only on fulfilling well his role as manager. This attitude preserves peace and clarity in all circumstances. Psalm 112 teaches that true prosperity is measured not merely by what you accumulate, but by how you manage what is entrusted. One may have little yet. Through wise stewardship, live richly in spirit and grow outwardly. Another may have much yet. Through poor stewardship, lose it all. Lasting prosperity always travels with stewardship. In every age, the difference between durable wealth and fragile wealth lies here. One side unites generosity with discretion. The other knows only to hoard or only to squander. The steward lives in circulation without losing balance. And this climate sustains enduring prosperity. Therefore, when you read Times, a good man showeth favor and lendeth, and guides his affairs with discretion. You see, not merely description, but a formula for life. Give, but with wisdom. Govern, but without closing your hand. Carry responsibility, but without fear. This is the art of stewardship and the secret that keeps prosperity from being a fleeting flash and makes it a lamp burning steadily in your inner house and throughout your life. Intergenerational influence. Psalm 112 affirms, his seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Asterisk, this is not merely a promise about biological descendants, but a profound spiritual principle where prosperity extends beyond one lifetime to become an intergenerational legacy. In the language of Scripture, seed symbolizes thought, belief, and habit. What you plant in the garden of the subconscious not only shapes your own reality, but radiates influence into future generations, into family, community, even society. Every thought you nurture is a seed. That seed does not remain dormant in the mind. It becomes habit, lifestyle, atmosphere. and this atmosphere permeates the environment around you. Children raised in a household filled with fear absorb the climate of anxiety, even if later they acquire material abundance. Children raised in an atmosphere of trust, gratitude, and generosity inherit seeds of stability and prosperity. This is no distant theory, but the quiet, powerful law of spirit working through every family, every generation. Remember, prosperity is not measured only by assets handed down. Money can be spent, houses can change owners, careers can be forgotten, but beliefs, habits, and the spiritual climate endure. If you sow seeds of trust in divine law, your descendants inherit an invisible yet mighty legacy, one that cannot be destroyed. Conversely, if you sow seeds of fear and scarcity, then even if you leave material wealth, they will struggle to hold it, for their inner foundation is weak. His seed shall be mighty upon earth. Times means the influence you sow today will continue to generate strength, flowing onward as a stream. Picture a great tree. It not only gives shade for itself, but for the young saplings beneath. It drops seed, and the seed grows into new trees. This cycle is the living image of spiritual inheritance. You are the great tree today, and the seeds you sow will become great trees tomorrow. Joseph Murphy taught that every thought carries an echo, an energy that not only shapes your life but imprints itself upon the current of humanity. This is why one person living in light can alter an entire community. When you choose faith over fear, forgiveness over resentment, generosity over greed, you are not only transforming yourself, but planting seeds for others to see and follow. This is invisible legacy, but more valuable than any possession. You may recall loved ones long gone who still exert strong influence. Perhaps a grandparent left little material wealth, yet bequeathed a spirit, an atmosphere you still feel today. This is proof that spiritual legacy outlives material inheritance. And it is the reminder that what you sow today will echo into the lives of those who follow. The truth is, the next generation learns not by what you say, but by the atmosphere. If you live in anxiety, you unconsciously sow anxiety. If you live in trust, you sow trust. If you live in love, you sow wholeness. This is why Psalm 112 declares, "The generation of the upright shall be blessed," not because they are favored, but because they inherit a right spiritual climate, and that climate reproduces prosperity. On the larger canvas, this spiritual inheritance touches society itself. A community where many sow seeds of integrity, generosity, and trust in divine order becomes a prosperous community. A community flooded with seeds of greed, suspicion, and fear reaps instability. The law operates from the individual to the collective, from family to society, from one generation to many. Thus, true prosperity is not the abundance of one person alone, but the power to create a flow of influence. You do not live for yourself only. You sow for those to come. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every atmosphere you carry is a lesson inherited by others. This is the deeper truth Psalm 112 invites you to recognize. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Asterisk, when you live in alignment with divine law, your inner voice becomes a space for your children to return to, a place where others may draw strength. You do not need to live forever to influence. You need only sow right seed. For that seed will continue to grow in future generations. True legacy does not lie in what you sign into records, but in what you etch into the souls of others. And when Psalm 112 says, "Times his seed shall be mighty upon earth," Asterisk, it is declaring that the seed you plant today, if sown in righteousness, will blossom into prosperity for many generations. That is true. Wealth that transcends time, wealth that never fades. Mastering emotion as magnetic force within the structure of the mind. Thought is the blueprint, but emotion is the current that animates the blueprint into reality. Emotion is the language the subconscious hears most clearly. A dry thought may pass and leave no trace, but a thought infused with powerful feeling is instantly impressed upon the subconscious and begins reproducing itself in life. For this reason, mastering emotion is not a psychological luxury, but the essential condition for building prosperity. Psalm 112 describes the one whose heart is fixed, not afraid of evil tidings. This is the picture of one who has mastered emotion. Bad news may arrive, but they are not swept away. They hear it, but it does not sink to the roots. Within them, faith and feeling have united into a magnetic force, drawing circumstances into alignment. This does not mean they never feel fear or sorrow. It means such feelings cannot command their actions or destroy their inner stability. Emotion is energy, and like every energy, it can be directed. If you allow fear to guide, the subconscious takes it as command and recreates circumstances that make fear real. If you allow faith to guide, the subconscious likewise accepts it as command and generates conditions that confirm belief. This is why Joseph Murphy emphasized that in prayer, you must pray with the emotion as though the thing desired were already true. An affirmation without feeling is a seed without water. It dries up, but joined with feeling, it germinates. Imagine your emotions as the magnetic field around a magnet. Thought is the iron core, but the field determines what is drawn or repelled. When faith and feeling unite, the attraction is irresistible. This is why one with strong belief and positive emotion radiates an atmosphere that draws opportunities, people, and resources. Conversely, one who lives in doubt and worry unconsciously sends signals that push blessing away. Mastery of emotion is not suppression. Suppression only stores energy until it erupts at the weakest moment. Mastery means observing, naming, and redirecting. When fear arises, you do not deny it, but you remind yourself that divine law governs all, that a greater order enfolds every event. When anger stirs, you do not let it dictate action, but channel that energy into creativity and resolve. This is the art of transforming raw emotion into fuel for prosperity. Emotion is the rhythm that creates resonance. If thought is the music, emotion is the echo. When the music and echo harmonize, resonance emerges, and reality conforms to that pattern. This is why the steadfast heart is undisturbed by circumstance. They know if they yield to chaotic emotion, they send the wrong command to the subconscious. But if they maintain peace, gratitude, and trust, even in storm, they plant into the subconscious the commands that ensure a good harvest. A simple practice is to feel beforehand the thing you desire. If you long for abundance, do not merely think of it. Feel it as present. Let the sense of safety, comfort, and joy surround you. When the subconscious receives this emotional signal, it accepts it as reality and begins shaping corresponding circumstances. This is not fantasy, but the natural operation of spiritual law. Have you seen someone fear an event so deeply that it finally came true? That is proof the subconscious responds to repeated emotion. If negative emotion can materialize fear, positive emotion can materialize blessing. This power explains why emotion must be trained like muscle. Each time you choose calm over panic, you are training the subconscious in a new habit. Each time you choose gratitude over complaint, you are redirecting the magnetic field around you. Or team, you become one who commands their emotional current. This is true power. For when you master emotion, you master the only language the subconscious obeys, without resistance. Emotion also creates influence that extends outward. A peaceful heart calms an entire room. A grateful soul uplifts a group. A person filled with faith inspires faith in others, because emotion is magnetic force. It shapes not only your inner life, but also the environment around you. When you master emotion, you generate prosperity not only for yourself, but for all those you touch. Psalm 112 reveals that true prosperity is stability, even when bad news arrives. This is possible only when emotion has been mastered. And when faith unites with feeling, resonance is born that turns affirmations into reality. This is the turning point where thought ceases to be mere idea and becomes lived experience. Then you understand that prosperity is not the play of chance, but the fruit of mastering the magnetic current of your inner emotion. The circulation of giving, Psalm 112 declares, He has dispersed, He hath given to the poor, His righteousness endureth forever. Asterisk. Here, generosity is not a sudden impulse nor a forced obligation, but a principle of circulation. Giving is the way to keep the flow of wealth alive, just as the heart pumps blood throughout the body to sustain life. If blood collects in one spot, blockage arises and life is threatened. So with wealth, if it is held too tightly without circulation, its energy becomes stagnant, bringing anxiety rather than vitality. The man of the psalm is not merely one who gives, but one who gives with wisdom. This is the distinction. A river is valuable because it flows in the right direction and rhythm, neither flooding nor drying up. Generosity is the same. It requires wisdom, so it does not become waste or create dependency. To give at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, this is the art of sustainable giving. The generous spirit understands that wealth is not solely theirs, but a trust entrusted to circulate. When they give, they do not become poorer. Instead, they become the channel through which the stream flows stronger. Just as a pipe that is clear allows more water to pass, so a heart that gives freely invites abundance to pour in. This is not wishful imagination, but the justice of universal law. By contrast, clinging too tightly sends the signal of scarcity to the subconscious. The subconscious responds by narrowing capacity to receive. Those who hoard without giving often live in anxiety, fearing loss, and this very fear is proof they are not truly wealthy. True wealth is not measured by how much you possess, but by how much you can share while still feeling safe. Joseph Murphy emphasized that when you give, you must give with the feeling that you are expanding the flow, not losing. If you give with reluctance or bitterness, you plant seeds of lack. But if you give with gratitude and joy, you plant seeds of abundance. Giving not only changes the situation of the receiver, but reprograms the subconscious of the giver. It declares, I trust in abundance. I believe supply never runs out. Generosity has another power. It creates social resonance. A generous act blesses not only the one helped, but spreads faith and hope more widely. One act of timely giving can plant seeds in the hearts of onlookers, inspiring them to continue the cycle. This is why even the smallest kindness can have vast influence. Yet generosity must be joined with discretion. Giving without wisdom can weaken both giver and receiver, but giving with discernment strengthens both. This is the difference between pity that indulges and compassion that uplifts. The righteous man of the psalm gives, but not wastefully, supports, but not indulgently, creates flow, but directs it to where It nourishes. Giving is also an inner training. Each time you open your hand, you open your mind. Each time you give, you reinforce the belief that you always have enough. When done consistently, the subconscious takes this as norm and shapes circumstances to confirm it. This is why the generous often carry faces of peace, eyes of light, and seem to meet continual blessing. It is not luck, it is law. Ask yourself, in the past week, what new stream have you created through giving? Did you feel your heart lighter after helping someone? Or do you still hold tightly, fearing lack? If you share, pause with this question. And let me thank you for even your presence and attention now is a form of giving. You are giving your openness, your listening, and it is more powerful than you realize. Psalm 112 paints the picture of a life where generosity and discretion unite to create a lasting circulation. This is the cycle of abundance, where giving does not impoverish but enriches. The one who lives by this principle becomes the channel through which supply flows, a flow that never runs dry, for it is never trapped in selfishness or fear. When you understand that giving is part of circulation, you no longer give with the mindset of sacrifice but of cooperation. You cooperate with the flow of life, and that flow always returns more than you have released. This is the truth. Psalm 112 proclaims a truth that can transform your entire vision of wealth, abundance, and the very meaning of prosperity. The courage to act in faith. Psalm 112 portrays the steadfast heart, unafraid until it beholds the desire fulfilled. This is the image of courage, where prosperity is no longer only an inner state, but a power transformed into action. Prosperity never remains in thought or feeling alone. It demands concrete steps. It calls for the courage to act before evidence appears. Courage, in this sense, is not reckless daring, but quiet confidence born of knowing the law is already established. The farmer who sows seed does not wait to see sprouts before believing in harvest. He trusts the law of growth, and so he acts even while the field is bare. Likewise, the one who lives in prosperity acts not from external guarantees, but from inward trust in the law. Fear often plays the role of gatekeeper, holding people within the safe zone. It whispers, wait a little longer, be more certain, wait for a clearer sign. But the truth is, waiting until all is certain is no longer faith. The prosperity of Psalm 112 does not belong to the endlessly hesitant, but to the one who steps forward when anchored in divine order. Courage is the choice to step beyond the cycle of delay. Fear creates a loop. You wait for evidence to believe, but because you do not believe, you do not act. And because you do not act, evidence never comes. But when you act in courage, the loop breaks. You send a strong signal to the subconscious that you believe, and the subconscious mobilizes resources to make it so. Picture someone standing before a river. They wish to cross, but wait for the water to stop flowing. They will wait forever, for the river never stops. The one of faith is different. They step into the water, and by stepping, the way opens. This is the spirit of courage in prosperity, acting from inward certainty rather than outward assurance. Courage is also the test of true faith. Anyone may repeat affirmation. Anyone may speak of trust, but only those who act before seeing proof truly live by faith. Prosperity does not come by thought alone, but by turning thought into decisions, actions, and daily choices. Remember, every action engraves itself upon the subconscious. If you act from fear, you stamp the signal of lack and doubt. If you act from faith, You stamp the signal of abundance and safety. The subconscious does not distinguish rehearsal from reality. It only responds to emotional intensity and commitment. Thus, every action in faith is training, programming prosperity into habit rather than leaving it as distant hope. Courage in prosperity also means you are not paralyzed by failure. The one who acts in faith knows failure is not the end, but feedback on the journey, they do not let fear of error keep them motionless. Each attempt, ek stumble, becomes another stone of courage, for they understand the law still works, and they are learning to align until the desired result emerges. How many opportunities are lost for lack of courage? People wait for perfect conditions, for unanimous approval, for risk to vanish. But such conditions never arrive together. It is courageous action that clears the path for good conditions to appear. This is the paradox of faith. You must step first, then the road is revealed. Psalm 112 shows that prosperity is not a static state, but a flowing stream. Courage is the force that keeps the stream moving. One may hold right beliefs and right feelings, but without courage they remain in dreams. Courage turns dreams into reality, potential into fruit. When you act in faith, you send a clear message to yourself and to the universe. You are ready to cooperate with the law. The law responds by opening doors you had never imagined. Each such step strengthens you, loosens fear's hold, until courage becomes your nature and prosperity, your climate. The courage to act in faith is the moment prosperity leaves the page and enters life. It proves you not only understand the principle, but embody it. And when you live the principle, prosperity must appear. This is the power. Psalm 112 reveals a power not for bystanders, but for those who dare to walk in trust. Embodiment in daily rhythm, prosperity is not a sudden event, nor a fleeting flash of inspiration that vanishes. It is rhythm, breath, embodiment repeated in the small decisions of each day. Psalm 112 shows the picture of one who does not merely thrill at hearing of the law, but lives in the law, turning divine principle into practical habit. From rising to rest, they continually choose to anchor the mind in higher order rather than yield to outward circumstance. A minute of morning prayer does not transform the whole of life, but it sets the spiritual climate of the day. A word of gratitude before sleep does not instantly create wealth, but it imprints the subconscious, planting seeds in the night. The accumulation of these small disciplines is what makes prosperity enduring. Just as an instrument produces clear sound only when tuned regularly, the mind must be tuned morning and night. Otherwise, the sounds of fear, worry, and want gradually overtake. The one who lives according to Psalm 112 does not wait for inspiration to act. They know inspiration comes and goes, but kayit, steady discipline, sustains the flow. It is this silent repetition that transforms prosperity from distant goal into natural climate, a morning choice to trust rather than fear, an evening choice to forgive rather than resent. These small moments gather into invisible legacy. The key lies in the origin of decisions. When you decide from fear of lack, you send wrong signal to the subconscious. When you decide from faith, even in small matters, you affirm cooperation with law. Repetition of such decisions turns faith into lifestyle. Prosperity does not come from one dramatic act, but from hundreds of small acts shaped by trust. The psalm describes the righteous as one with a fixed heart, unmoved by bad news. That state does not arrive from one fervent prayer, but from steady inner training. As muscle strengthens only through repeated exercise, so the spiritual heart is fortified through daily practice. This is embodiment in daily rhythm, where prosperity ceases to be idea and becomes habit, reflex, second nature. Picture a house. If you build only the facade but neglect the foundation, collapse comes quickly. The foundation of prosperity is daily rhythm. To abandon small disciplines is to weaken the base. But when you keep simple practices, prayer, gratitude, meditation, upright action, you are laying a structure that cannot be shaken. Joseph Murphy taught that the subconscious responds most powerfully to steady repetition. A fleeting thought may vanish, but a thought repeated with feeling becomes belief, and belief becomes reality. This is why prosperity must be rooted in daily rhythm. The more faithfully you practice, the more the subconscious accepts it as truth, and outer life reshapes to mirror it. Daily practice also shields you from upheaval. The outer world may shift suddenly, but if your inner life is anchored each morning and evening, you will not be swept away. When bad news comes, you need not scramble for comfort already dwells in your foundation. When opportunity appears, you are not overwhelmed, for the mind is prepared. Daily rhythm is continual readiness, making prosperity not surprise, but natural flow. This embodiment also gives prosperity a deeper dimension. It turns principle into personhood. The one of right habit becomes living proof of law. They need not persuade with words, for their presence persuades. The atmosphere they carry, the peace in their eyes, the certainty in their speech all radiate the message that they live in divine order. This is the power of voice within, not just a voice you hear, but a space you return to. Asterisk. When you live daily in the rhythm of prosperity, you become a safe space for yourself and for others. True prosperity does not dwell in high moments, but in quiet constancy. The enduringly successful are not those who wait for inspiration, but those who keep rhythm. They do not let circumstance dictate climate. They let inner climate shape circumstance. This is the difference between living in scarcity and living in abundance. One reacts to the outer world, the other creates from within. The lesson here is clear. Prosperity is not what you wait to arrive, but what you practice to live. Each morning, each evening, each small decision lays the foundation. When you keep this rhythm, prosperity ceases to be hope and becomes embodiment, part of your very being, flowing into every area of life. A vision of enduring legacy. Psalm 112 declares that time's righteousness endureth forever. Asterisk. This is a profound statement, opening a vision of legacy unbound by time. Men often think of inheritance in terms of material wealth, of what can be counted and recorded, but Scripture reminds us that true legacy does not reside in tangible possessions, but in righteousness, wisdom, and inner stability. These do not decay, do not lose value, and their influence flows across generations. A fortune of money may vanish within years, and a great structure may crumble with time, but the legacy of integrity, compassion, and faith continues to live in the minds and hearts of those touched. This is wealth untouched by markets, independent of politics, beyond circumstance. It becomes a quiet reservoir, an atmosphere enveloping family and community, a power exceeding what the eye can see. Here, righteousness is not rigid morality, nor ritual form, but rightness in thought, feeling, and action. It is harmony with divine law, alignment of inner and outer life. The one who lives in righteousness need not prove success, for their life itself is the proof. They leave a lasting impression, not through what they owned, but through their presence, their treatment of others, and their calm steadfastness even in trial. Enduring legacy begins in small choices, repeated day after day, forming a stream. A father may leave little property, but if he leaves his children the habit of faith, gratitude, and generosity, he has given a treasure beyond measure. A mother may never be famous, but if she sows peace and wisdom into a home, her legacy will live in every generation that follows. Psalm 112 emphasizes that legacy is not outer display but inner stability. The upright are unshaken, not because they escape trial, but because they have built on unchanging law. That foundation produces inner strength, which holds them firm and shows others the way. Such legacy persuades more deeply than any sermon, for it is life embodied. Joseph Murphy taught that every thought is a seed, and no seed ends with one life. When you sow integrity and trust, you not only transform your own path, you create a field of energy that blesses children and community alike. This is why time's righteousness endureth forever. Times for right belief and right habit do not perish. They multiply. A lasting legacy is not born of one moment of triumph, but of a lifetime of consistency. When you live in righteousness, each small act becomes a brick in the bridge for others to cross. Each word spoken in peace, each choice made in faith, becomes a silent but mighty lesson. Others may forget your words, but they will not forget the way you lived. Some leave behind great names, yet are forgotten when the age shifts. Others live quietly, yet their unseen stream nourishes families and communities for generations. This is the difference between visible achievement and spiritual legacy. Once you grasp this, you cease striving to prove yourself outwardly and instead focus on building stability and wisdom within. Enduring legacy also means leaving a mark beyond the personal. The righteous do not keep light for themselves. They let life become a beacon. They do not aim to leave a fleeting mark, but a clear path where others may walk and find peace. This is the most precious inheritance, one that needs no fame to be remembered, for it lives in those it has touched. Righteousness endureth forever times is the reminder that all visible achievements are limited, but the legacy of integrity never vanishes. It is the hidden stream nourishing generation after generation, becoming the foundation of a stable community. When you live in this spirit, you are not merely wealthy for a season, but a link in the unbroken chain of prosperity binding past, present, and future. Such legacy does not need to seek remembrance, for it inscribes itself in the minds of others through presence. When your heart is upright, when your actions are wise, when your atmosphere is steady, you are building an imperishable inheritance. This is the truth. Psalm 112 proclaims, and the call to each of us, what in your life will truly remain when all visible achievements have passed away? Conclusion, an invitation to activation. True prosperity is not a destination you must chase after endlessly, but the awakening to realize that you have always stood within its flow. Psalm 112 unveils a truth. Prosperity is neither random nor reserved, but the natural outcome of alignment with divine law. Every line of that sacred song was not written to be admired alone, but to be lived, to become the atmosphere of spirit that surrounds your every day. When you breathe, you do not beg the air to come. It is already there, flowing freely. So with prosperity, it is an atmosphere ever present, but only when you open in alignment do you truly feel and receive it. Alignment is not straining effort, but surrender. The release of resistance, the release of fear of lack, the allowing of faith and righteousness to become the breath of spirit. Prosperity, as Psalm 112 describes, is the heart unmoved by bad news, the mind unshaken by circumstance, the hands open to circulate wealth. It is the harmony of faith and action, of thought and feeling, of receiving and giving, once you live in that harmony, prosperity is no longer something you pursue, but something you carry. The final conclusion is this: you need wait for no further sign. The sign is already within you. The decisions you make each day, the emotions you nurture, the seeds you sow into the subconscious are the strongest confirmations of whether you live inside or outside the current of abundance. And you hold the power to choose. Joseph Murphy reminded us that when you declare truth in faith, the subconscious never debates it, obeys. If you sow the image of lack, it faithfully produces lack. If you sow the image of sufficiency, it faithfully produces sufficiency. Thus, the very moment you awaken to sow rightly is the very moment you activate prosperity. Look upon the whole picture. Psalm 112 has drawn the upright are not wealthy only in possessions, but wealthy in stability, wealthy in trust, wealthy in character. Such wealth does not end in one lifetime, but flows through generations, becoming enduring legacy. They do not only receive, but also give, and by giving keep the current alive. Here lies the hidden formula, the blueprint written into Scripture, waiting not to be admired, but embodied. Prosperity has never been a hidden secret. It is a self-evident principle, yet men overlook it, distracted by appearances, forgetting the essence is inner climate. When you remember, when you return to alignment with divine order, you find prosperity never afar. It is in every breath, every thought, every feeling you cultivate. The close of this journey is not for knowledge alone, but to awaken a new way of living, a way where prosperity ceases to be fragile hope and becomes living reality, where you breathe in divine supply, walk with a steadfast heart, and become a channel of blessing for life. You need not become someone else, nor wait for conditions outside. You need only return to the truth that you are and have always been a vessel of abundance. Each time you choose faith, each time you choose righteousness, each time you give with wisdom, you affirm it, and the universe responds unfailingly, for the law cannot fail. So let this conclusion be an invitation not merely to hear, but to live. Let prosperity become as natural as breath. Let each small act bear the mark of trust. Let each day be a testimony that divine law is still at work, and you are its living witness. When you embody this way, prosperity does not only flow into you, but through you to others. You become a river, never running dry, because circulation is constant, and in that circulation you discover peace, stability, and the deeper meaning of life. This is the end that opens into beginning. Prosperity is not what will come. It is already here. And you, even now, can activate it by awakening, aligning, and living in its truth. This is the legacy you may leave, the atmosphere you may carry, the truth you may become. Prosperity is no longer dream, but life itself. The journey through Psalm 112 does not close with ancient songs of praise, but opens into a new rhythm. For the present, prosperity is not something to admire from afar, but to embody in every decision, every breath, every act born of faith. You need not wait for perfect conditions, for the divine current has always been here. When you align thought, feeling, and action with eternal law, you do not only become prosperous, you become a channel through which blessings flow into the world. This is the true inheritance, a lasting legacy that transcends generations. Let your life stand as living proof that divine order never fails.